Hey guys, spoiler alert, next week we'll be coming out with a Blitzcrank jungle video. The player we're analyzing is Am Kees, so I got on the phone for an interview, and who you're going to hear from today. Make sure if you want to see when that video comes out, you hit the subscribe button down there, and maybe give this video a like too, but of course this is going to be more of a podcast style, so if you want to pop your phone or whatever in your pocket to listen to us talk to one another about how to play Blitzcrank jungle properly, here you go. Thank you for joining me today. Ever since you sent me your email yesterday, I was able to discover that clearly you've played for some semi-pro slash pro teams. You're very big in the scene, it seems like, for a while now. And I know a little bit more of your background, but today really all I'm going to do is just ask you some questions about yourself, ask you some questions about Jungle Blitzcrank, obviously, and then if there's any other questions or concerns, you can of course ask me along the way too. Okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. So I like to start again, like I've seen some of your history already, but I like to hear about your League of Legends story. Like, how did you get started? How has the semi-pro play been going? It looks like your most recent team is the agency, and you guys have been doing pretty well. I don't see like below a third place finish in any tournament as of yet since you joined, so pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Where do I start even? Well, I used to be a top laner. I think you can see that as well in the LoL wiki. Only recently, like it's my first split, like officially my first split kinda, that I started being a jungler. So that's why.
How
I
did
think
you
all the
how
way
did
up.
you first learn about League of Legends? Like, what was your first introduction to League? Did you play like Dota first or any other games or?
No, through my brother. I started playing since season one, even when I was like 12 year or something. So I
Wow.
just followed a lot of games what my brother played, and League of Legends was one of those, and it seemed really fun. I surpassed him pretty quickly as well.
Even at the young age of 12, you were already surpassing him, or did it take you a little while?
I think I surpassed him pretty fast, to be honest.
When did, because you said your first lane was top lane, when did you like start like get really serious about League? When were you like, oh, I'm pretty effing good at this game, like maybe I could actually do something with it?
Honestly, I don't think. I think that only happened like very recently, like
Hmm.
early 2022 when I role swapped into jungle. I think before when I was playing top lane, like it was still playing competitive, but it wasn't like super serious, you know. Like it was just playing a bit of competitive on the side because I'm a really competitive person. So I really just enjoyed the competition, but it was never like a serious ambition, I guess you could say. But now I'm going a bit more serious towards it.
Okay. And what was your first like introduction to competitive play? Was it just like some of your high elo friends were like, "Yo, we're gonna make a team," or how did you get into it?
I pretty much just got randomly added someday. Uh, yeah, kind of like how you did. And it was just like, yo, you want to play for my team? It was like some German team. And we said, yeah, sure. Since there it started. Essentially, kind of, maybe not anymore, but that's how it used to be a lot. Since like a lot of people aren't even aware like ERLs exist.
I was gonna say that's crazy. I mean, like, yeah, it's definitely not like that anymore. League of Legends esports is like a huge business now, so people have scouts and assistant coaches and all that good stuff to try to find new talent. But it looks like your first team was back in. Let me check the little wiki here, 2018. So you've been kind of like in and out. It seems like for the past 4 years now.
Yeah.
And have all these teams like? Did you start like getting paid immediately? Was it mostly just like, hey, let's see how far we can go, and then maybe we can talk about pay, or how are you balancing like your normal life, right? Like school or work or whatever it may be with some of these esports that you do.
All the way up to 2022. Like only in my past like 4 recent teams I started getting paid. Before that, like when the esports scene was really young, like he would be happy when you would get like your travel costs refunded for an event or something like that, you know?
Like, yes, free.
Yeah, exactly. Or like I don't know, like a little gift, a mouse pads. But what was the question even again? Sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, the main question I was trying to lead into was like, is League of Legends like your job right now, or do you try to balance it with other things as well in your life?
No, right now I'm a student right now. I study
Hmm.
psychology. I'm in my second year. I don't work right now. It does give me like a bit of pocket change, I would say, equivalent of like a part-time job. But yeah, it's definitely not like anything I can go full-time in yet.
Yet, yeah, that's the key word, right? Because there's still the
Yeah,
potential to keep
exactly.
growing.
Yeah, that's also what I want, right? Since I've become serious about it.
Yeah, and that you kind of segued me into my next question perfectly. My other question was going to be, do you have any big like League of Legends goals? Do you want to make it to the LEC? Do you want to be a big streamer one day? Is there any other things that you would like to try to do?
I mean, for me, I want to. My current goal is to be able to be like a professional in League, because right now I'm semi-professional. I have to do it part-time.
Mhm.
I feel like LEC is still a bit too high of a goal, like too long term. So like going into the higher ERLs is my current goal.
Yeah, that's a good goal. And so it's always good to set small steps instead of just looking at the big goal. So I think that's a good plan, honestly. And it's not like you're not at like the peak of competition in EU West right now. I looked up your stats and you have peaked at like over 1,000 LP in Challenger before. How has been the switch to jungle been affecting your kind of gain or loss of trying to climb the ranks? Has it been easier? Has it been harder?
I'd say easier, to be honest. I feel like jungle, like it's one of the reasons why I swapped in the first place. I swapped from top lane to jungle because I felt like I just wanted to have more impact in the game. I just want to be more of that deciding factor compared to top lane when you're permanently sitting on your island. So yeah, and also when I play jungle, I sometimes, or when I play top lane, I sometimes play jungle as well, and it went always well.
And so it felt like a natural progression. You were like, I'm already killing it in the jungle when I get autofilled. Basically, like I might as well give it a shot to see how far I can go. Is it?
Yeah, it was pretty smoothly, the roll swap.
Nice, very good. Yeah, I think it's something like the 40% in all regions, like their top elos in solo queue are junglers. It's very heavily swayed to jungle because obviously they have a lot of
Really?
impact in the game. But you seem to have been having some pretty good success recently, obviously, on Blitzcrank jungle. Now, before we get into like Blitzcrank jungle specifically, I'm curious, when you were a top lane, were you doing some of these experimentations? Did you just pick up Blitzcrank jungle because of the buffs recently? Have you ever done like wacky picks like this before? Is this kind of your first foray into some off meta stuff?
I would say when I was a top laner, for example, in competitive, I was also like always known for having like these really wacky pocket picks. Stuff like Kiana top lane, just roaming around the map was one of the first ones. Wait, let me think of some other like really off meta stuff I played.
You're good. I'm just wondering if it's like in your blood, right? That you want to try to like theory craft, or if this is just something new because of all these off meta buffs that Riot just pushed through.
Yeah, I mean, I like playing off meta. And then, of course, like if a jungler gets buffed or like if a champion gets jungle buffs, you always have to try it out. And I just really loved how they changed Blitzcrank. It's just so much fun to play Blitzcrank in your jungle, trying to gank everywhere, hook everything.
Yeah, after watching some of your games, it looks completely unfair. To be honest, do you think before we even get into like the metrics that Blitz is going to be nerfed in the jungle at some point? Do you think he's too strong right now?
I've watched his win rate. Like his win rate is super low. It's like 44%. The thing is, like people are also still like troll building him, like going in Ashes Tooth, and I don't think everybody has figured him out yet in the jungle. I do think I have figured out it a lot more.
Yeah, the build you go is clearly much more consistent than anybody else's that they're trying to run. Most people are either, like you said, doing like Malady or doing not Malady. Sorry, that's an old item now. But the attack speed one. I went back to season one just there. But you know, either that attack speed item or Triforce and going lethal tempo, right? And you've kind of flipped it on its head to where you're like going true tank, it feels like, and maybe working in some support items. Why is that?
I mean, thinking about Blitzcrank, like theoretically, that is simply what made sense. When you think about Blitzcrank, it's like a jungler that doesn't really farm and gank everywhere. And when you have these like low economy junglers, these sinner junglers, you always build them tanky, like a Jarvan, a Trundle, because you simply don't have the economy to afford damage item.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, like Champ Tank synergizes really well with his kits. You get the speed boost for the hook, you get like the extra damage on E, and a little bit of the AoE to help you clear.
Yeah, the extra damage on Chemtank seems absolutely nuts in some of the clips that I've seen. I've seen you just like
Yeah.
2 seconds kill a scuttle crab or like hook a gromp over the wall to steal it and then kill it without smite, maybe at around like level 10 or something. So there's some wacky things
Yeah.
that extra damage allows you to do. Okay, well let's just move into like more like game flow then at this point, right? Tell me more about like why you think Blitz jungle is just strong at this moment, if you do, or if you think he's kind of like in the middle tier.
I mean, I think he's one of the best gankers in the game right now. I think the meta right now is still like pretty gank heavy, which suits him. And it's just like I'm not sure about competitive, right? I actually haven't tested that out yet. But I think he's also really good for solo queue. Like you don't have to care about camps at all. You're like Blitzcrank doesn't really scale with gold in the way that other champions do, because your items, like, they're nice. Your mythic is really good, but for the rest, the moment when you got like your predator boots, you're good to go. You don't have to do any camp at all in the game anymore, and you just run around from lane to lane, trying to grab everybody and like trying to kill everybody.
Yeah, it really feels like, even though you bring Smite, you're doing the jungle still, right? It really feels like one of these like roaming top lane supports that is just completely harassing every lane, but you have the benefit of, you know, no laner being able to say like, oh, he's missing because you're playing in jungle, since you're just could be anywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in addition to that, like his single target damage isn't even like that bad. With the W, with the E, like you can actually skirmish pretty well on Blitzcrank, and you can also do like objectives like Drake and the Herald pretty fast with this W.
And with his ultimate passive too, it seems like once you hit level 6, you can easily solo Rift Herald or Dragon without any help, from what I've seen.
Yeah, exactly. His single target damage definitely shouldn't be underestimated.
So, I mean, that leads us perfectly into the just general early game. From what I've seen from the majority of your games, when you don't get invaded or like top lane doesn't bring flash or something, it normally looks like you're starting blue and then grabbing Gromp and then going to get red, and then you're immediately looking for a gank after that. Is that kind of how the early game goes most of the time?
Yeah, because Blitzcrank is like single target oriented, like his damage. You always want to do like your 2 buffs and Grom, then you get level 3, and then you just want to look for a gank. Like you can start red and go towards both sides, or like you're blue, you can start blue and go take Grom, go towards your red. But you just want 3 camps, like those 3 camps specifically, and then you want to start looking for ganks.
Absolutely, yeah. The only one game I saw you start red, I noticed that it was a Camille top lane, and she, like I just mentioned, didn't bring flash. She had like teleport ignite, and that's when you kind of switched up your pattern and started red. Then you went to blue, then you did Gromp. Was that just more than likely specifically because you knew it could be an easy gank on her?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm trying to remember the game. Yeah.
I think it's a bit hard to like draw a conclusion for a video about the pathing, because the
Mhm.
thing is, a lot of my games, what I do is, because you have so much time, pretty much what all junglers do is you path towards the lane that you want to focus, right?
Yep.
And then, like you take the scuttle on that side. With Blitzcrank, because you only need 3 camps, you have like so much time before the scuttle spawns. Like, let's say I want to focus my bot lane. I can still do a path towards top lane, gank him, get a kill, and then still be there on bot lane. Because also, what a lot of junglers have to do is they have to, let's say they want to focus bot lane, they farm top into bot because you want the camps to respawn that way. But Blitzcrank, the camps are still alive. Like, you don't even care about them. So there's no like, so you're not really defined by which way you path in that sense. Like
Right. By taking only 3 camps early game, you basically, whenever you don't see an opportunity to gank, you can be like, okay, well, basically my whole jungle's still up, so let me just go take one of those until I see an opportunity again. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, like your ganks are, or like your ganks are not gated by your camps, pretty much.
Yeah, and it seems completely nutty for solo queue, honestly, because I've seen, like we were talking yesterday about like where we had that Heimerdinger top lane that just kept getting ganked over and over and over again, and it's a classic thing to abuse a lane like once they've popped their flash, of course, but it seems like Blitzcrank has an even easier time doing that because you not only have one way of CCing the enemy, right, with that just being running up to them at full speed and knocking them up, right, but if they do kite back or have some movement ability, you can just hook them back in, so it feels like it's almost foolproof, but obviously with some skill involved.
Yeah, exactly.
So it feels like the game entirely after those 3 camps early game, we look for the gank, right? Then let's say we have some time, we'll clear some of these other minor camps, right? Once we get into mid game, it's almost the same flow. Am I wrong? Where of course when dragon spawns, if we've built an advantage bottom, we can try to grab the drag, right? If we see people leaning bot, we can maybe grab the Rift Herald, but it's really kind of the same mindset throughout the game where, you know, I'm trying to constantly gank. It feels like, correct?
Yeah, and one thing that's like, when you get a few more points in W, what you can do as Blitzcrank jungle is just hook the enemy camps as well, right? Because
Mhm.
like when you can hook the small camps, like the Krug, the wolves, and kill them before the how do you call it, the leash timer runs out. So it's really efficient. And as well, like if you have the smite, the wolf on, you can even like hook the buffs. And like I've sent you a few videos in the drive, for example, where you can just hook a buff randomly and kill it before the timer runs out, and the enemy team has no idea what happened.
Yeah, it's disgusting, and I've seen you do that a lot. I've seen, and we mentioned the minor camp support through. I've seen you do it with wraiths. I've seen you do it with Gromp. I've seen you do it with Krugs. The interesting thing with Krugs for me that I didn't notice until watching your gameplay is that once you kill the big one, the big Krug, the small Krugs don't look like they have a leash timer on them, so you can basically kill that big guy and then sit there on the other side of the wall and not even have to worry about taking the little ones.
Yeah, the the small crocs that spawn from the big croc, I think, have a separate leash timer. Can even take those and farm those.
Yeah, and it seems so easy to do too because you don't have to expose yourself to being like deep in the enemy jungler to take a steal, right? In so many of my
Yeah,
diamond games, right, I have my jungle go with no lane priority into the enemy jungle and he can't do anything, but you don't even really have to worry about lane
yeah,
priority, it
and
feels like.
that's exactly why it feels so good, because you can. It's like such a non-committal move, because you can just hook a buff over the wall or hook a camp over the wall, and
Mhm.
then it's already counter jungled as well, because
One
and
kill.
then the jungler needs to clean it up. And one additional thing that's a really cool like mindset or mechanic that you can do is you can counter jungle your own camps. All right, and
I
I'm
saw
gonna
you do
just
this and
explain
I
that.
didn't understand what was happening because I did
Yeah.
see you like kill Big Wraith and just dip out of there. So
Yeah, exactly. So you, in addition that you only have single target damage and you don't really like to have the raids, you are perma ganking. So when you want, and because you're perma ganking, like let's say you gank bot lane, the jungler he could just invade your top side and take your camps, right? But because you never want to take your camps anyway, you can counter jungle your own camps. And then let's say you gank bot lane, the enemy jungler comes to invade your camps. He comes into like an already counter jungled camp.
he's like, what the hell's going
So
on in here? Like I didn't do this. Like
yeah, exactly, right? So in this sense, you can counter jungle your own camps, you can counter jungle the enemy camps, and by doing that, you kind of like drag down the enemy jungler's like economy to your own level.
and like you
So
said
you can
earlier,
make him,
most junglers need that economy, but Blitzcrank really doesn't. He can function well on
yeah,
pretty low economy, being a support
yeah,
champion, right?
exactly, right.
You did mention briefly too that we're maxing W. Again, tell me why we're maxing W. Obviously for the faster clear speed. Does it do more damage now to enemy champions as well? Or is it just for the clear speed?
Well, it does give more attack speed, so
Mhm.
you get like a little bit of a boost in against champions. It's mainly for the clear speed, but it's also because of the movement speed, right? So putting points into W gives extra movement speed, and then since you're only going to use your Q and your E once in a gank, and since they're like utility spells pretty much, like you don't use your Q for damage, putting points into W first is best.
Yeah, and I think you led yourself into a great next question on just like how are you so successful with ganks? From what I've seen, I don't want to spoiler alert here, but from what I've seen, it's mostly you're always trying to run up on them with your movement speed, whether that be from Chem Tank and Predator or your W, right, to get the knock up first, and then more than likely save that hook if they somehow try to escape. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the biggest part how I'm specifically really successful at ganks is because you just try to read the map in the sense that you try to read all wave states, and every like wave state that's coming into you, you just right click to that lane and you just try to gank them, right? Because they have to get the wave in. And when
Mhm.
you like, especially when you start doing this like more and more, you do this to mid, you do then to go straight to bot, gank there with the wave state. As a laner, you need to get like your wave in, right, into the tower for it to bounce back. And if you're there as Blitzcrank, like you can't do that. You need to ask the jungler to help you. But in that sense, you can always be there as Blitzcrank, and you're forcing the enemy jungler also to like mirror your ganks. And that also like tags into the like getting the enemy jungler to your own level, right? And if the jungler doesn't do that, it's just like a 2v1. It's just an easy gank.
Absolutely. And so tell me a little bit more for someone who's lower elo like myself, right? When you say looking at wave states, are you looking if the lane's like slow pushing? Are you looking if they're just trying to crash and you notice that they're more than likely trying to get a quick back? Or tell me more.
Yeah, what I meant with looking at waves is it's like when the enemy has more minions and the wave is coming into your team, right? So they have to crash the wave. That's what I meant with it. So if you're then there, like they cannot crash the wave, and then either they're gonna die to a gank because they have to overextend, or the jungler needs to be there, and you can either 2v2, do it again, and then make the jungler keep coming to you.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you're also looking at if your team pings that it flashes down and you know, normal things like that for a jungler to see if a lane is gankable as well, right?
Yeah, especially repeat ganks are also really effective on Blitzcrank. You just gank them once, burn your flash, and then you can like camp that specific lane for like the next 5-4 minutes, because it's really easy to gank. You can just walk up on them, they have no flash, press E, press Q.
Yeah, and I think one of the swaggiest things I saw you do, which was like duh, like when I saw it happen like the second or third time, is if sometimes you gank a lane and you're not able to get in range for your E or your knockup, I noticed that you do this fancy thing where you'll smite a minion that's in front of you and then go for the hook, and that has caught so many people off guard from what I've seen.
Yeah, it was an old strategy on Blitzcrank support. It was a bit troll to have like support and go smite. Now since Blitzcrank is a jungler, and you have smite automatically, it's like a new mechanic that you can abuse pretty much for ganking as well. It catches a lot of people off guard.
Yeah, it's so nasty. I know I saw some Korean players running Dematerializer as support and trying to like achieve the same thing, but it's a little bit more telegraphed. This is like instant, and so many mid laners and top laners have just been completely ruined by thinking they're safe from you and then just get grabbed into your team. It's pretty dope. So in the mid slash late game, it sounds like we're of course still trying to constantly gank. It sounds like, right? Is there any like weak point for Blitzcrank? Is that we need to be aware of? Right? Is early game super weak? I noticed that more aggressive junglers, more often than not, were trying to invade you at level 1. I don't know if that's a common occurrence.
Yeah, he's pretty weak at level 1 since you start your W on level 1, so he's pretty prone to invades. I think his weak point is probably level 1 to 6, like before you have 6. After you have 6, you have a lot more damage, like on hit from your ultimate passive, and just ultimate in general does a lot of damage. But before, like, if the jungler does try to like mirror your gank and have like a counter gank off, then you will probably lose the 2v2 or the 3v3.
Okay, good, definitely good to know. And then it sounds like then, naturally from that statement that his power spikes seem to be at level 6, probably when you get your predator for your boots, excuse me, right? And then also when you get your mythic.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'd say like 3 power spikes, or well, kind of 3 power spikes is like your second tier boots. You rush that, and after that, you just are so fast roaming around the map because you go water walking and celerity as well. Second spike is like champ tank, and third spike is your deathman's plate. Because I would always kind of go deathman's plate now on my second item because it's just like kind of like a small champ tank actually. It just gives like extra movement speed even, and then also the extra damage on the E after you hooked somebody. So it's also like the perfect item next to Champ Tank for Blitzcrank.
Yeah, it seems like both Dead Man's Plate and Chem Tank, when they proc their like boosted auto attack, can do like upwards of 400 to 500 damage, and you have no damage items.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty gross. And I assume on Blitzcrank, since again you're moving around so much, you have all the movement speed, that you're charging both of those items up faster. Am I right in assuming that?
Yeah, you're right. You just running around charged as a plaster.
Pretty nasty, pretty nasty. You can even blow up some squishies going full tank. Everyone loves to see that. Nobody gets upset when that happens. No.
Exactly.
You mentioned briefly too that Swifties or your level 2 boots are typically a big power spike for you. I noticed that most of the time you seem to go Swifties. Is that just for movement speed? Sometimes I see Merc treads. When do you kind of decide what boot to take?
Yeah, so specifically for Blitzcrank, you either always go Swifties or Merc Threads. And the reason is you have your self slow on W, and because the Swifties like decrease slow and Mercs like have tenacity, it actually decreases the self slow that you like give on yourself.
Do you know? I was supposed to do research about this like a long time ago because I wanted to make a video on it. But do you know off the top of your head, Roshan, if Swifties or Merc treads are better at mitigating that slow effect on Blitzcrank? Is it Swifties because they're at 30% slow resist, or?
Mercs have 30% tenacity.
Oh, they
right?
do, yeah.
So it's the same. I think since tenacity stacks multiplicative,
Uh-huh.
and I don't think the slow resist do. If you have like additional tenacity from runes, Swifties are better. But yeah,
But straight up
Swifties also give
1v1, they're pretty much the same thing when it comes to
yeah.
the slow resist.
But I think like a lot of times I go Swifties because it gives like 15 extra movement speed, and it is just a cheaper item to rush.
And on that low economy, it's going to help you, of course, just get that level 2 spike or the level 2 boot spike faster as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other like big key power spike moments for Blitz jungle that people need to be aware of in the game? There could not be, you know what I mean? Because again, you said he's pretty low economy. You really just need your boots and maybe your chem tank, and you're pretty much full build at that moment. Of course, all the extra stuff is going to help you, but those are really the main
Yeah,
moments.
I'm
It sounds
trying
like.
to think. I don't think there are any like real spikes aside from that. After Champ Tank, you can either just go more tank items or go into like support items, either Zeke's or Knight's Vow, that kind of stuff. Or just go like a Warmox, like I don't know, some other just full tank items.
Yeah, I wrote down here like you just said that it looks like Deadman's and Chem Tank are really like your core items with your boots, of course. And then through looking at your other replays, I saw different items like you said, Knight's Vow. I saw you build an Anathemas one time, or Anathemas, however you want to say that item's name. Abyssal, Mikhail's. So it really is just kind of like what fits your situation, it feels like, or what you have money for.
Yeah, exactly. It's purely situational, pretty much.
Awesome. Well, we've covered a lot of good stuff already. I always like to ask, just in case I've missed anything, are there any other like special tips and tricks on Blitz Jungle that we missed while we were going through here? We talked about like the Smite Q gank, right? We talked about stealing camps safely. Is there anything else that we missed?
The really main thing that makes me different from like other people trying out Blitzcrank jungle is like the mindset behind counter jungling, like enemy camps, your own camps, and really just dragging the enemy jungler down to your level, kind of. Because I
Because
don't see any other Blitzcrank do that, and I think it's also like really effective, like just how the champion works in general.
yeah, and like you said earlier, kind of, it's almost like if you let the enemy jungler scale, they will outscale you eventually. But if you keep them down with you, then you're obviously going to have more effect than them because you can, function at that lower income level.
Yeah, exactly. I think like late game, you don't scale that well as Blitzcrank. Like you're reasonably strong mid game, but late game you pretty much just play as a second support. You just play with your team. Like you have a bit more damage than a normal Blitzcrank support because of that placed and Champ Tank. But aside from that, you pretty much play like a second support in the late game.
Yeah, and I kind of noticed that. I wrote down in my notes when I was taking record of your game, like later in the game, you are just kind of Blitzcrank again. You're still looking to hook in like a squishy carry, right? You're hoping to catch someone out. And then, of course, you have all that extra benefit of the extra damage and smite for doing jungle camps. But you really do just kind of turn back into Blitzcrank once it gets to late game.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. We went through chicks. Oh, I did want to mention too. Sorry to rope us back to items. I guess a good majority of Blitzcrank jungles I saw are going blue smite, and you're going red smite. I actually assumed because of your build that you were going to be going blue smite because it's so movement speed focused, right? So is red smite just there to kind of allow you to duel and do some more damage?
Yeah, I think like in theory, blue smite sounds pretty good as Blitzcrank because it just like slows enemy. You get fast movement speed towards them. But in practice, you don't use it too much because when you are in Q range, you're not yet in blue smite range, so you don't really use blue smite that much on Blitzcrank. And red smite does like give you a lot of extra damage that can kind of like top you over killing somebody or not killing somebody.
Yeah, and it even works. I saw some one nasty kill that you did where you red smite. There was someone at maybe like 200 health. I'm pretty sure it was a pike in the mid lane. You red smited him, you ulted him, and then the burn from the red smite killed him at the end. And it was pretty sick. And like you said too, Blitzcrank has such a good ability to stick on top of people too that you're going to get much more value and damage out of the red smite than you would the blue smite.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. For runes, we already talked a little bit about this, but I just want to make sure I have your rune page correct on what you typically run. I saw that you normally bring Predator, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ingenious Hunter, and then Celerity and Water Walking. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's either like the Predator, you always go Predator. For the second page, you either go Celerity and Water Walking, or you go Hex Flash and Cosmic Insight. The reason for like the second, like Hex Flash and Cosmic Insight, is pretty much like same for Ingenious Hunter. Like item haste that Ingenious Hunter gives works really well with this crank. It decreases Predator cooldown and it decreases like the Gem Tank cooldown. But Hex Flash like lets you find like even more creative ganking patterns because you don't have the dash. And Cosmic Insight also has some item haste on it, which some people forget. Just like 10 items.
Yeah, and if you have both Cosmic Insight and Ingenious Hunter, I'm sure I can look this up if you don't know off the top of your head, but I assume your Predator and Chemtank are on super low cooldowns, almost half. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much almost half. I don't know the exact.
That's okay. Neither do I.
Yeah.
We can't do math that fast. It's fine. And then your just general thoughts on these people who are going like Lethal Tempo and I'm forgetting Hail of Blades. Just probably not the best because why?
I think Blitzcrank benefits a lot from like the speed ups that Predator gives. It allows you to fish for hooks like a lot better, just in general, like walking up in a lane, getting close to them and then hook. And also it allows you to just speed boost to somebody, eat them, and then hook, which other runes don't really allow you to do.
Absolutely. And let's not also forget that with your Chem Tank and the Dead Man's Plate, now Predator on top of that, you have all these damage boosts for your one macho attack or knockup that you get on somebody.
Yeah, exactly. I even had like a video where I use all of them and somebody gets fucked.
We're almost at the end here. We're doing pretty good, I'd say. You've helped me so much understand a little bit more. It's going to be such an interesting video because I would have never analyzed the counter jungling thing. In my own mind, it was just like, oh, you wanted to get to a gank faster, but I think that's really going to pique a lot of people's interest. That's super cool. What are your biggest synergies, or what champions do you want on your team when you play Blitzcrank jungle? I saw that the nastiest ones to me looked like when you had another hook support on your team in the bottom lane, that it was just disgusting when you were roaming with them. But tell me more.
Yeah, I think like most champions that set things up for you. Something like a Nautilus support is really good, but like a Syndra mid lane with the stun is also really good.
Mm-hmm.
It just allows you to like any kill. Like it's so easy to get a kill on those setup champions. Like anything that's like maybe a 70% chance to gank or like to get a kill out of the gank, it's always a 100% chance with Nautilus, for example. Nobody
Exactly.
can really escape you.
Yeah, disgusting. I assume things like that are like super hard CC, like Lilia ult would probably be great with Blitzcrank, right? Or like Ashe ult, just to get that engage from far away so you can stack CC, like things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like most engaged supports, Ashe, Pantheon, Syndra.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. And then are there any junglers specifically that you hate to go against as Blitzcrank jungle?
Olaf is really good into Blitzcrank.
Uh-huh.
He just runs you down. Like you cannot do anything versus Olaf pretty much. And Nocturne as well. And he also has like an easier time trying to counter gank you than other junglers, for example.
Gotcha. So it sounds like really strong skirmishers are really with like good stick ability are the hardest counters for Blitzcrank jungle.
Yeah, like Nocturne and Olaf specifically kind of negate your kit, right? It's hard
Hmm.
to like hook them or do stuff that you really want against those champions.
Right, yeah. Olaf just ults on top of you and then you can basically do
Yeah,
nothing to
exactly.
him. Okay. And then the one thing I forgot to ask was how do you play team fights as Blitzcrank jungle? I assume your role kind of evolves with where we are in the game, right? I'm just thinking
I
like
think
from my perception, it looks like early and mid game you could really function as like an effective like scrapper or bruiser, you know what I mean, in the middle of your team fights. But as the game kind of went on, it seemed like we talked about earlier, like you are really just Blitzcrank at that moment. Like you just want to hook somebody in that's high value.
yeah, exactly. I think early game and mid game you have still have a lot of damage comparatively. You can really kill somebody. Yeah, you can like 100 to 0 some people even on some spikes. But the longer the game goes on, like you turn more into like normal Blitzcrank. I think like late game team fights, you really like are just a hook bot. You really try to fish for those hooks. You really try to abuse pockets of vision, for
Right.
example, as well. And late game as well, you just peel more for your carries than really try to scrap it out.
Oh my god, yeah. I have a few amazing clips where like you're like in the middle of a team fight, and then I see like a Camille or something like going onto your back line, and you just hook the Camille back up to you, so she front to backs with you. So sick. Really interesting peeling ability as opposed to like other supports where you don't have to like really stay on top of your teammates. You can kind of function as long as you can hit your hook.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. I'm trying to see. Was there anything else that I had questions on? I don't know. Rashawn, was there anything else that I didn't like ask a question on that maybe would be good to include?
Let me see. I also made like a small little document. He's good versus like low mobility enemies, obviously, but
Uh-huh.
also versus assassin because your E like can't be interrupted. So assassins have a really hard time trying to get on your backline. His damage should be underestimated. I already said that. I guess like the most comparable champion would just be a Trundle jungle.
Oh,
A
really?
lot of single target damage, and he ganks a lot. So,
Yeah, the
and
power
that's about
fist
it.
not being able to be, stopped in any way is pretty disgusting because like you said, like if it's like a let's say like a LeBlanc or like a Zed and you get the auto attack off, even when they port back, they still get knocked up. So it's
Yeah,
pretty nasty.
exactly. It makes it really nasty to peel with, and I think like the late game play style is like a lot of it's like very reliant, right? Like one
Hmm.
hook can win you the game in late game, so you really just try to play around vision as Blitzcrank jungle.
Hmm.
Vision is really important.
Yeah, it's such a double-edged sword as Blitzcrank, I feel, because like you said, one hook can win the game, but someone who's worse, such as myself, like I feel all this pressure of needing to land a hook late game.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like if you don't land hooks on Blitzcrank in any team fight, then you're a bit useless.
Yeah, like your main ability, your signature is just gone. Yeah, that's gonna be me when I start trying to play. Let's see. Well, the last, I promise, question that I had was there anything that you wanted me to shout out for you? I saw you have a Twitter. I followed you this morning, by the way. Is there any other things or events or, your stream if you have one that you want me to shout out in the video?
No, not really. I think like the Twitter is fine, something like
Okay.
that.
I'll pop it on Twitter. I'll at like Fnatic. and just make sure that they're aware.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
All right, Rashawn. Well, thank you so much. I will shoot you over some RP for your name change today. And if I have any other questions or if anything else comes to mind for you, we have each other on Discord, so it should be easy. Have a good rest of your night, I believe it is for you. Yeah.
It is. It's already 8 at night.
No, it's only 11 for me right now. So I'm gonna go meal prep, and then I'm gonna write this script, and then hopefully this video will be out at the latest by like next Friday. But I'll follow up with you.
All right. Sounds great.
Thanks, Rashawn.
Right. Yo.
Bye.